What's up, guys? It's Bolt, and I'm back with another Remnant 2 build guide. And in this video, we're going to go over my Harvester's Scythe Boss Nuking melee build. Haven't brought you guys a melee build in quite a while, and this one right here has to be one of the most overpowered ones I have seen in this game yet. That's why I'm bringing you two variations of this build. First one being the absolute pretty much you are a god, unstoppable, delete everything in sight version of the build. A very cheesy build. And the second is the more honest, still godlike, but you're a little bit more honest. You actually have to dodge in the second version. But we're starting things off with the first one because I know you guys like cheese. I know you guys like deleting bosses, so look no further. Here is your god melee build right here. And starting things off, we have the Alchemist slotted in first. And this is very important. We want the prime perk. We want the spirited prime perk for the 3 additional concoctions. And before I get into the rest of the build, let's go over the concoctions that we're using for this specific build right here. We have the Matsus tonic for the extra health. We have the meat shake for the extra DR damage reduction. We have the bark extract for 30 armor. And then last but not least, we have the sanguine vapor, and that's going to give us more lifesteal. We are using lifesteal on this build. And when everything's all said and done, when our buff is active from Juggernaut, we have about 79% damage reduction on this build and some crazy lifesteal. We are immortal. We cannot die. We heal so much. And going back to Alchemist, we are using the Frenzy Dust skill, and that's going to increase our melee speed and our movement speed. But mainly, we want the melee speed. That is a big increase in our melee damage, so that's why we are going with the Frenzy Dust. And we don't have to worry about using Stone Mist in this one because we are pairing this with the Challenger archetype, and Challenger is going to give us the Juggernaut skill, which is going to give us that stagger resist. It's going to give us that melee damage, the movement speed, the bulwark, all that good stuff. All these things combined with the armor that we have on, we are unstoppable here. That stagger resist is huge. It's going to allow us to tank these hits, not get staggered, and just heal right through. And let me tell you something about the Harvester's Scythe. It does so much damage. You're hitting multiple times with the charged melee attack that you're just healing so much. It's like a burst heal, man. It's insane how strong this build is in terms of DPS and tankiness. Like in my head, that should not exist. The amount, like DPS and tank should not go together. It should be like one has to be sacrificed, and on this build, nothing is being sacrificed. So it's absolutely insane. And then you think about, okay, melee, I'm meleeing a lot. Well, I have to worry about stamina, right? No, because we are using the Matriarch's Insignia, and Matriarch's Insignia, it gives you 10 stamina on melee hits, and since the Scythe hits multiple times on the charge attacks, you are replenishing all of that stamina back with one charge attack. Essentially, this build is giving you infinite stamina as well. It's bonkers. Like, this is insane how all of this stuff synergizes together. You guys seen it in the video, all the one phases that we did on these Apocalypse bosses. Man, it was absolutely incredible. And on top of the stamina restoration that Matriarch's Insignia gives us, it also gives us a whopping 35% damage. Freaking insane, man. I love it. Next up, we have the Brawler's Pride, and this is going to give us melee speed. Again, melee speed is another huge bonus to our DPS for this build. And on top of that, we're getting the 5% crit chance. Man, who doesn't love crit chance? Just pile it on, baby, pile it on. Get them juicy crits, and the charge attacks from the Scythe do quite a lot of damage, especially when you hit the last overhead swing from it, that is your big juicy hit. And that thing crits. That thing is critting for over 4K damage, 4,300 or so damage, man. It's crazy. Speaking of crits, we have the Burden of the Gambler. We are not weak spotting on this build. Melee builds do not weak spot. I mean, they can, but that is not the focus of melee builds. You want to get the most benefit from crits from melee weapons, and that's why we're going with Burden of the Gambler. Here's one you don't see too often, Burden of the Mason. Now, this is going to give us a, if my math is correct, with our 79% or more so damage reduction, because we are using other consumables, which I'll go over in a second. Burden of the Mason is going to give us around a 29% increase in damage, which is insane. My math might be incorrect. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. But I do believe that 35% is going to give us around a 29% increase in damage, which is insane. So, in order to get that 79% damage reduction when everything's all, all wrapped up and with a bow on top, when we have our Juggernaut active, and while we use the following consumables right here, we're going to be using the Sweet Leaf, which is going to give us another stack of Bulwark. We're also going to be using the Confidence Booster, and then when everything's all said and done, we have around 79% damage reduction. So that will give us, close to 30% melee damage from the Burden of the Mason. Insane. And then you guys are no stranger. This is probably like on every single DPS build in the entire game, and rightfully so. It's probably the best DPS ring in the game, and it's Probability Cord. Next up, for the weapons, this is not a ranged build, so you guys can use whatever you want. This is my recommendation, so we're just trying to buff up our melee damage. We went with the Corrupted Rune Pistol, and that's for the Death Brand mod, and that's going to give us some nice increased damage right there. We have Fetid Wounds, just in case you want to do corrode the enemy right before you fight them. You're more than welcome to use that. And on to the second, our long gun, we have the Ring of Spears mod, and this is considered melee damage as well. This is mod that scales off of melee damage, so it goes hand in hand. We're going to be nice and tight with the enemy. We're right on top of their on top of their nutsack, so you want to have the Ring of Spears spinning around at all times. Given that's just some passive damage for you, and it scales with the melee damage. It does a pretty damn good chunk of damage. And since the mod requirement is 1250, is quite high, we're going to pair it with the pressure point. So when we do activate it, we're going to activate it right on the boss's face. We're going to activate it, get that nice little explosion, and that's going to give us a nice huge chunk of damage. Usually hits for like around 4K plus damage as well. So that already starts the fight off on a good note right there. Boom, right out the gate, you're activating a mod, you're getting 4K damage. Beautiful. And then that little passive damage from the ring. Can't go wrong with that. And then here is your star of the show, the Harvester's Scythe. The Harvester's Scythe is probably the best melee weapon in the game now. It is so much fun. It looks awesome. Has the melee speed added to it. It has a innate 12% crit chance. This thing is a absolute monster, man, and it looks awesome. Everything about it is just awesome. I love scythes from the first Remnant. In Remnant 1, the scythe was the best weapon in the game for melee weapons, and now in this one, it carried over, and now we have the Harvester's Scythe. The other scythes don't even hold a candle to this one. This was by far the best. And you have 3 different mutators to choose from, and I'm going to break down each of them and each of their pros and cons. And you can't go wrong with either of them. So the first one we have here equipped is the Overdrive Mutator. Now this is going to increase our crit chance and our crit damage. And since this does hit multiple times with each charge attack, and you're only going to be landing charge attacks with this, you very rarely will you be using light attacks. It is just going to give us the max attacks like immediately. So we're going to have 20% crit chance and 20% crit damage. This is going to give you the biggest damage boost out of the other 2 mutators that I'm recommending. But keep in mind, you will be fighting some bosses that will have thick skin, things like that. So you could play around with, or strategize differently. And if you do fight a boss with thick skin, then you could use the following mutator in the Hypercharger. Now, Hypercharger increases your melee stamina cost by 65%, and it's also going to increase your melee damage by a whopping 50%. Massive increase to our melee damage. And you're going to see that stamina cost penalty. We're not unaffected by that. Remember, we're using the Matriarch's Insignia, so that is going to replenish our stamina on each hit, so you don't even have to worry about it. So this is essentially just giving you flat damage, flat 50% damage. And this is a good one to use against thick skin, because thick skin bosses do give you do penalize you on crit chance and crit damage. So the more flat damage you have, the better. And then now the third mutator that you can use, and this is probably the most fun one and the most popular one, and that is the Shocker Mutator. You've seen it in a couple of the fights here. Shocker Mutator is amazing because on each charge attack, it will proc the shocking effect when you see that big bolt of lightning come down and do massive burst damage. It's crazy. It's great for enemy bosses that have adds because it will strike the adds around them as well. and you won't have to worry about them. It's amazing against bosses who have innate weaknesses to shock damage, like Magister Dulain, who has like a 10% weakness to shock, so that's 10% multiplicative damage. But you have to worry about elemental resist. And for some whatever reason, anytime I'm rolling elemental stuff on my build, bosses just seem to get elemental resist. I don't know. I feel like they read my game, and that's what that's what it is. But those are the three mutators you can use, and all three of them are extremely effective, and all three of them are capable of deleting these bosses. You just pick your poison. My preference is the overdrive. I feel like the crit is always the best way to go in this game, so that's my recommendation. But the most fun one and the most visually pleasing one is Shocker, and then Hyperactive if you want to just go straight up flat damage. Let's go down to the armor set. Obviously, right here is just basic. You want to be as tanky as possible because we will be absorbing blows. We will be absorbing damage, so we want to be as tanky as possible. So we just went full Letos with the Profane Heart because we will be stealing life. Now, remember, the Harvester's Scythe does such huge damage that any damage we take we're just healing it back immediately. There's nothing stopping us. It's crazy. Onto the trait breakdown. Potency and Strongback are the respective archetype traits. Potency is amazing. This is one of my favorite traits, and we will be utilizing the consumables, and it will be up active for a longer duration, and that's what we love to see. Fortify, because we want to be as tanky as possible. Swiftness, we love that movement speed. Close the gap on bosses. Some bosses like to run away from you. You close the gap with them with the movement speed from Juggernaut Swiftness and the Frenzy Dust. Gifted, to keep those skills out longer. Vigor, because we are a tank. Spirit, just to get those mods out, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys, the bosses are probably gonna be dead before you even need to recharge it up. This is if you want to mob with this build. Melee builds are not great for mobbing, but this one is more than capable of mobbing. You just have to be aware of flying enemies. Remember, not every enemy in the game is on the ground, and not every boss is on the ground too, so you can't really utilize this build like non-stop. This is more of a boss nuking build for those bosses who are melee-able. Expertise, just to get those skills out. Again, if you do choose to mob with it and you're up to the boss, you'll have your skills back sooner. Siphon are very important because we need the leech. We're pairing this with the leech trait because we want that lifesteal, efficacy, and to give us those massive heals when we do use our charged melee attacks. And then Chakra to keep those mods out longer. Let's go on to the prism breakdown for this specific build. And then we have critical damage, critical chance, and melee speed for the single fragments, and in the prism itself we have critical damage. We have the warrior fusion for the melee damage and melee speed. We have the rogue fusion for melee critical chance and evade speed, even though we're not evading. It's fine because this is going to go onto the next prism for the other build. Longevity for just to have our skills and our mods out longer. Tank because we need to absorb some of this damage. And then last but not least we have Jack of all trades. Now I tried different mutators on this build, and Jack of all trades just ended up being the most consistent. You know, I tried Hyperactive, I've tried Critical Situation, which is on the next build, but since we're in such a heavy armor set, we can't utilize Critical Situation, so Jack of all trades is the preferred legendary for this specific melee build. But that's it. This is the cheese build, man. For all my honest players, don't worry, I got you. Let's get right into the next build. Alright guys, so here is the honest version of the build that actually has to dodge. Let's get into the first changes right here. First things first, we got a couple of concoction changes. So we are now using the strong drink, and we're using the strong drink over the sanguine vapor, and this is going to put us in the lightweight category because we are utilizing critical situation now on this build. So we are lightweight with a medium armor, very nice to have, and this is without any of the bells and whistles, you know, the sweet leaf, the confidence booster, and the Juggernaut active, and we are already at 58.8%. This gets close to 70% DR, so you're still insanely tanky while being in the lightweight category. Absolutely insane how like Alchemist is just so damn good. Let me just stop there. Another change now. So instead of using Burden of the Mason, we are now using the sealed resin loop, and this is going to help us with our dodge. This is going to be able to enable us to be able to dodge out of our melee attacks. So you can be hyper aggressive with this build. This is my favorite ring, and probably one of my favorite rings in the entire game. My favorite melee ring, probably one of my favorite rings in the entire game as well. It's just so much fun because it lets you dodge, cancel out of any melee attack. So that means you could go hyper aggressive on the boss, just wail on him, wail on him, wail on him. As soon as they attack, you could just freaking dodge. You're never locked in animation. And this is what is going to be your source of defense right here. And once you get the timing down and everything like that, you're going to be smooth like butter. As you've seen in the Stone Warden fight, man, that guy couldn't touch me, and I'm just bobbing and weaving, wheeling and dealing on him. I love this ring so much. It's so good. It's so good. And then as for the armor set, if you guys want to min-max the armor like I did, I am using the Crimson Guard Shroud, the Red Widow Raiment, the Crimson Guard Sabatons, and the Crimson Guard Gauntlets. Now, the other change to this build is we are now utilizing the critical situation. We are in the light roll category, so we can utilize the critical situation. Now, 35% crit chance on this build is quite nice on pretty much all of our attack. It's like close to 90% crit chance now that we have. Absolutely amazing, and we're getting some quite a bit of damage there. But if for whatever reason you guys cannot roll critical situation, then by all means you guys could go back to the Jack of all trades and be tankier as well. You don't need to be light roll. I like light rolling. We have the evade speed on this. We're nice and light. We're nimble, and it just feels really smooth to be in the lightweight, taking advantage of critical situation and the evade speed and things like that. It just feels very smooth to me, and I prefer that. It's a lot more fun to me to play that way and actually have the boss be a threat to me. Whereas in the first build, the absolute cheese build, 0 bosses are a threat to you. You are a god. Nothing is stopping you. You are destroying everything in your path. While as this one, okay, let me dodge a little bit. And even if you do get hit, you're still freaking tanky as hell. And you're gonna heal it back anyway. So this build is still pretty damn broken, if I do say so. But it's a little bit more honest and a little bit more fun, in my opinion. But let me know in the comments your thoughts of both builds. Which do you prefer? What do you think of this build in general? The Harvester's Scythe. Do you see the bosses that we did? Did you see the damage to the bosses we did? What do you guys think of those kills? Which was your favorite kill? Mine has to be the first one, guys. You guys know how much I hate Pharin and Phelan. I hate that third phase, so anytime we could skip that phase, ooh, that's the chef's kiss, man. Deleting Phelan, Pharin in one phase, you love to see that, man. But let me know your thoughts. Please, guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Please consider sharing it and subscribing if you have not done so already. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.